Hi kids, Flat Stanley here. Just wanted to tell you about my trip. And I did flips for my trip. I changed colors for my trip. I went from here to there. I turned right side up. I went upside down. I went through 10 different states, over 3,300 miles, and I just had a great time. If you're ready, here we go. It all started when Casey sent me to Texas. Here I am just before she put me in the mail. I asked to go special delivery, but she said no. When I finally got to Texas, I found I had my very own room. I felt special. Our first stop after we left Texas was Arkansas. Here I am in front of the Welcome Center as we crossed the state line. While we were in Arkansas, we stayed at Rick and Dorothy's, and this is their golf course. It's in front of their house. I played golf. I think I need a smaller club, don't you? This is Ernest. He's Rick and Dorothy's dog. We got to know each other and would just sit on the front porch and watch the cars go by. We had a good time. While I was in Arkansas, I went to the Bill Clinton Presidential Library in Little Rock. President Clinton was the 42nd President of the United States. His library is built over the Arkansas River. This is the presidential limousine. I asked if I could drive it and they said, no, I don't think they could find the keys. They said I could see the presidential seal. I thought I'd feed it a fish, but it was just a picture of an eagle. It would have been more fun if it were a seal from the ocean. While I was in the library, I saw a suit the size that could fit me. Wow, that was special. What a surprise. Here's a flat Hillary. Hillary Clinton is President Clinton's wife and currently the Secretary of State. That's a very important job. How did they get her flat? I don't know. Do you? Here I am with Casey's grandma and grandpa in the Oval Office. This is the one that President Clinton used when he was president. From Arkansas, I went to Tennessee and stopped in Opryland. That's where they sing country music. My voice is a little flat, so I'm not a very good singer. They didn't care how flat my voice was at Opryland. Here I am singing with the band. Could you sing with the band? Not far from Nashville, Tennessee is the Hermitage, the home of our 7th president, Andrew Jackson. He lived a long time ago and his portrait is on the $20 bill. I asked if they had any samples of $20 bills. What do you think they said? No. This is President Jackson's fancy coach, which would have been pulled by 2 horses. I think I'd like to ride in this coach. Here I am in President Jackson's backyard. This is his vegetable garden as well as his flower garden. It was really nice. From Tennessee, I went to Virginia and then Washington, D.C. The next morning, I got on the train to see all the monuments. This is the Washington Monument. It was made to honor our first president, George Washington. People call George Washington the father of our country. It's really, really tall. It was springtime in Washington and all the cherry blossoms were in bloom. There are over 2,000 cherry trees in Washington, D.C. Who could come to Washington, D.C. without seeing the White House? This is where President Barack Obama lives with his family. This is the front of the White House. I asked the guard if I could go in and say hi to the president, and he said, no. Here I am at the Library of Congress. It's the nation's #1 library. I wanted to check out some books, but I didn't have a library card. Finally, I ended my trip to Washington, D.C. with a visit to the Capitol building. This is where Congress meets and passes law. I was very impressed. After I left Washington, D.C., I went to Charlottesville, Virginia and visited the home of our 3rd president, Thomas Jefferson. His home is known as Monticello. It's a wonderful farm and a very beautiful area where he grew cotton, tobacco, and raised lots of family. After I left Monticello, I went to the home of James Monroe, the 5th President of the United States. His home is called Ashland-on-Highlands. Here I am with the statue of the president. I asked him if he wanted to have lunch, but he didn't say anything. I stayed at Callaway Gardens in Georgia, a very large garden outside of Atlanta. In the gardens they had a butterfly farm. I asked if I could catch some butterflies. What do you think they said? No. Since it was Easter, there were chicks and bunnies in the garden. These are really big chicks. I thought they might be chocolate and I was hungry, but the people in the garden said, "No eating the chicks." Can you see me? Can you? Here I am in Casey's grandpa's pocket. That's the way I usually traveled. Not far from Callaway Gardens was Warm Springs, Georgia, the retreat of our 33rd President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Here I am with Casey's grandma in front of the little White House. This is where the president would stay when he came down to Warm Springs to relax from Washington, D.C. This is their ice box. It's like a refrigerator but doesn't have any electricity. They put blocks of ice in the lower part and the food in the upper part. When the ice would melt, they'd have to get more ice to keep things cold. I looked in it. There wasn't any food. President Roosevelt was paralyzed from the waist down, so he couldn't use his legs and had to use a wheelchair to get around. I asked the tour guide if I could sit in President Roosevelt's chair. He said yes, and here I am in President Roosevelt's wheelchair. After 14 days of travel, I'm finally back in Texas. It's so good to be home. The end. I hope you enjoyed my pictures, and maybe we'll do it again someday. Bye-bye.